It's all about ponds, like collecting water. This is taken the other day. This was its first total fill, so there's still sediment in it. When a pond initially fills up, there's going to be a lot of suspended clays in it, you know, so the water will be murky. And that may take 6 months for it to fall out of. It could take longer. So here it's still a little murky, but the important thing is that we're holding water. We're collecting it and we're holding it, and then we could reuse it in the landscape. Ponds are amazing because we can get so many uses out of a pond. You know, we can use it for irrigation. We can use it for recreation, wildlife. It's a major energy sink in the land. We want to think about collecting water, you know, keeping it as high on the landscape as we can and reusing it, recycling it. It's easier to collect water at the bottom of the land, but it has less energy in it. The energy is leaving. It's kind of atrophy in your system. If you can collect it high, then it has that potential energy where you can run it down your piece of land and use it. So here, I've got the plans here if you guys want to look at it, but here's the plans from the Grandview project. There's a greenhouse that was already there, the biochar. And then this is the lowest spot on the piece of land. And so we've got gutters on the greenhouse and the biochar that come into this diversion box and then starting to fill the pond. It's not even halfway full yet. I only got the everything plumbed into it maybe a month ago or so. But we've been collecting some nice rain.
Does the biochar have gutters as well?
The biochar has gutters, yep. And they were all, you know, it was thought out pretty well, but we had to kind of re-engineer this and change the gutters up a little bit to get it all to come back into this diversion box. So I think I got a picture. Well, that's coming up. I got a picture of the diversion box. I'll explain it a little bit better.
What program are you using to draft this?
Okay, that's a good question. What I like to use, a lot of people use CAD. If you're working with engineers and professionals, they really like to see CAD. The limits of CAD is it's basically for professionals. If you're presenting a plan or you're doing it for a client, it's harder to see the plan. Not for the amateur, but just anybody looking at a plan, you can, with what I use is it's an Illustrator program, and it actually, because it's Illustrator, it illustrates the points a lot better. And we're working broadly, so you know, we want to be specific when we're doing it, but we don't need that minute detail. It's better to kind of keep it broad, and not vague, but broad, you know. Okay, so here's a section view, and I'm sorry this is small, it's hard to see, but this is basically the section view of our pond. So here's some important points. This right here is basically original ground level. It's kind of basically midpoint in here. So when you're working with a piece of land and when you're moving earth, you want to think about moving as little as possible. So you really want to think about balancing your cut. Your cut is the hole in the ground, and your fill. Your fill is what's coming out of the hole. So you want to balance that cut and that fill. You want those to equal out. Like you don't want to cut more and then to have extra earth. You don't want to cut and not have enough earth, cut too little and not have enough earth to make your berm. Here we bermed it up a little bit. So it's probably 5 or 6 feet tall out of the original ground. And it's lined with clay. So you want at least 12 inches of really good clay to line the entire thing with. And then we have a keyway trench right here in the dam that is entirely out of clay. In the keyway, I've got a little video of that. Okay, I'm running the excavator. We've got Sean running the compactor. I'm filling the keyway trench in, and Sean's coming behind me, and he's compacting it in small lifts. And what we'll do is we'll work up to the top of the keyway with the compactor. So we're compacting clay in the trench. We get an excellent compaction. We'll work all the way up to the top of the dam, and then I'll be able to run the machine over it with the tracks for the entire width, and he'll come back behind and run the compactor. The keyway is basically a trench along the whole perimeter or the whole middle of the dam that locks the dam into it. So you're cutting out that trench and you're rebuilding the dam inside that, and that keyway is holding the dam. So you're not just putting the dam on top of earth with nothing connecting it to the earth. It holds it there because what you have is obviously a lot of hydrostatic pressure here pushing against that dam, and if you don't lock it in, it can push your dam out and major failure. So that is incredibly important. If you guys ever get a pond built on your land, like talk to the guy who's going to build it, or you build it, make sure you put a keyway in there. That's critical. The other point is compaction in your dam. It's all about compaction. Compaction is a high rate of compaction as you can with the equipment. And basically what that means is you're spreading out layers, maybe 12 inches or less, and you're compacting it as you go. And there's different methods to compact as you go. You can just have the piece of equipment, the track on the piece of equipment can compact it if you move over a half a track at a time. So you make one run, you kind of move over just a half a track's width, you make another run back, move over half a track's width. So you're running down, you're getting optimal compaction. Or there's rolling vibrators and sheep's foot compactors, and there's different equipment to get a high rate of compaction. But it's all about, compaction is all about soil moisture. You have to have enough moisture in the soil to compact. If it's super dry, it won't compact. It just won't stick together. And if it's too wet, what you end up with is it'll start to wobble. The whole thing will wobble if you're trying to compact when it's too wet and you can't get a high level of compaction. So it's like this sweet little spot in the middle. Yeah, this is another video, so hit that. It's kind of the construction of that lower pond that we just looked at. So here again, I'm sculpting with the machine. You can see the greenhouse here. It's all about the compacted clay. It's like you can see, I have a sheep's foot roller and some of that, and then you can see the compaction marks of the machine. So here's our dam, elevated from the ground around, and then here's the inside of it with a layer of clay compacted. So it's just a little bit to show you. The opening to the right is the fish lock. This diversion box, fish lock, I'll talk more about that, but that's why that's not filled in. And you could kind of see, this just is great texture here. You could see the level of compaction. You could almost see it, the shiny bits here. You can see where it's compacted. So here's your keyway. This is the dam we're building. This is the upper pond. This is the keyway. You can either do it with the equipment, but with the machine, with the excavator, or what we're doing here is a rolling compactor. I just wanted to show you so it illustrates this point really well. Do you see, it almost looks like a shiny marble, like glass, some of this. When you get high compaction rate, that's what it looks like.
So that's higher compaction than the rest of it. That's,
The point is basically that you're going into the substrata, what's below it, and you're creating a trench, and then you're compacting in that trench, and then what's on top of it you're compacting. And so basically that trench, that whole area is one piece then, and it's anchored in the earth. Now this is, you could kind of see it, is what I was talking about. When you're into really good clay and you take the machine and you take the knuckle of the machine and you smear that clay, you can almost get a glass finish. So it's just something to look out for. You know, clay is like, when you're doing earthworks, clay is what you're always looking for. You're always hunting clay. You got to get to know clay. You got to become a clay hound. Like anywhere you go, you just start picking up the earth and you start feeling it. You just, like all day long. I'm like, people think I'm crazy, but I'm like, I'm feeling the earth. I'm like, and there's all kinds of tests that you can do. There's some really basic tests. I'm not going to go too deep in it, but there's a shake test. Basically, you can take in a jar, you can take a certain amount of the material, break it down, add water to it, shake it, and then what settles out, it'll settle out at different layers. You'll have gravel at the bottom, you'll have sand, you'll have silt, and then what eventually falls out is the clay. And what you can do is measure that. And you can measure the strata. And what that tells you is the percentage of clay in the soil. And that's what's critical. You want 30% clay minimum. So that's the shake test. There's the snake test, the shake test, the snake test. The snake test is easy, but then again, the soil, the clay, has to have a certain amount of moisture in it for it to work. So it has to be enough to work to where it'll make a ball, and you make a ball with it, and then you kind of do it like Play-Doh. You make a cylinder with it, and if that cylinder can be bent and pressed into each other, then you've got enough clay. There's enough clay in it to use for pond building. You could also send samples off, but that's, costs money and takes time. So, but that's a good thing if you don't know, just send a sample off and try to get it analyzed. And then if you don't have enough clay, you can use bentonite. Bentonite is an ancient form of clay that works really well to seal leaky ponds. So this is a pond. It's all really good clay. I've compacted everything. I've gone in here and compacted the sides. I built it up in small layers and rolled over them. And then the last thing I do is roll over the sides. So, other liners, you can use a rubber liner. There's a little retention pond, little sediment pond there that it was an old frog pond and already had rockwork in it, but it leaked, and we were able to incorporate it into our system, and we added a rubber liner into there to do that. I try to stay away from rubber liners if I can. They're, clay is a lot cheaper. Clay is available. Rubber leaks eventually. Rubber can get holes in it, and it's pricey. I mean, it's like $2 or $3 a square foot, and it's hard to install. And here's our upper pond, and we had to put bentonite in. So we ran out of good clay to pack into here, and we had to put bentonite.
how much does bentonite cost?
Bentonite's pretty pricey too, but it can be spread very thin.
And it stays.
Well, I didn't illustrate that well and didn't explain it well, I'm sorry, but you need to put another layer of soil on top of that, and it's best to put good clay on top of that. So it's kind of like You got to get the bentonite, but then you got to get good clay on top of that also.
So before you run out.
Yeah, save some, or we had to import some. And then it actually, what I thought we were getting wasn't what we got. And so you'll see it. It's pretty cool. It's kind of stuff you get into. But we put soil up with really low clay content on top of this. So what happens is you can't compact with this soil. It has a lot of saprolite in it. You can't get good compaction, and it doesn't stay there so well. And so you get a lot of sediment in your pond.
Are you using any spillways or standpipes or?
Yep, my philosophy is to try to use as little hardware as we can besides the earth, but we've used plenty of concrete out there, not plenty, but we've used some concrete, pipes, different things. The spillways, I try to, because this is rainwater collection, it's a little different if you're using like a live stream, which you really can't do that anymore. You really can't. You can collect water from a stream off your land, but you can't divert it, and there's major environmental risks. It's way more dangerous, and then it kind of takes it up to the next level of engineering, and you probably have to have major permits and work with the Corps of Engineering, the Army Corps of Engineering, and so try to stay out of live creeks and streams if you can.
Springs broken.
Springs, you can take some water from the spring, but that's a very sensitive spot because the biology, the life in the spring. I could go on and on about springs, but if you're not careful, you can ruin your spring. You can actually cave a spring in, and it won't flow out anymore. And you can really, it's the most sensitive area really on your piece of land. But no, you can use a spring and you can do it wisely. Yeah.
I just heard that North Carolina was looking at taxing people for well water.
For well water or roof?
Consumption of well water.
Probably. Yeah.
They can figure out to do that.
Yeah, and they want to tax you for how much water you hold on your land. Yeah. And out in Colorado and Oregon, different places, it's illegal. And what people do is they actually build underground cisterns and pipe it in from their roof into the cistern and hide it and still do it. I mean, everybody does it. It's just you have to hide it.
The bentonite is still more economical than getting good clay brought in?
It depends. It really depends. Bentonite, you don't need a whole lot, and it's very effective. It's easy to spread. There's less labor involved. It's a very pure source, and it's very effective. So it depends on the scale, and kind of depends on what you're doing.
I noticed there weren't very many rocks.
No.
I live on Stone Mountain, so digging one out, we'll have to.
Dig it out, yeah. You dig it out, but that's an earth resource. Your rocks are an earth resource. Yeah, you guys want to take 5?